Most editors think it's all about cutting the scene, but experienced pros know it's about how you transition between them. My name is Austen Menges, and I've been a pro editor for over 20 years. And today I'd like to invite you into my edit suite and into a conversation with director, former editor, and current co-professor with Oscar-winning actor Matthew McConaughey, Scott Rice. And today we're going to look at a film that Scott directed and I edited that's called Treasure Imagination. And we're going to specifically look at how we transitioned from scene to scene. By the end of this video, you're going to have 4 different ways to transition from scene to scene that you can start taking into your own edits today. Let's dive in by looking at the first transition. All right, Scott, so I'll let you take it from here. Give us a little background on the film and take us through this transition.
Yeah, well, this was a project that we shot virtual production, and it was my first experience learning virtual production, so it was a lot of fun. We did a little ode to Indiana Jones. And in that first transition from the city scene to the cave scene, we ended up going with a match cut on the action of the hat coming down and then the hat coming back up in the new setting. Now there are a few other options we had. We could have done a dissolve. We could have done a perfect match on action, so cutting on the action of the hat coming down or coming back up. And I just decided to instead make it feel exactly like what Steven Spielberg did in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as we transition from young Indy getting his hat to adult Indy raising his head back up and revealing that he's an adult underneath that hat. So that was part of the thinking behind it. Austen, I remember there was also an option of repoing the shot so we had a perfect visual graphic match on the hat going down and the hat being in the exact same part of the frame. But I think we felt that was a little too on the nose. It felt better to let that first shot in the city be a little wider, and then when we get to the cave, we're just a little bit tighter, kind of more in a medium close-up. So we really are cutting from a tight medium shot into a medium close-up once we get to the cave.
Not only did Scott have the match cut in mind, but he got coverage. So coverage is when you shoot things a bunch of different ways, because we never know what's going to work until we try it in the editing room. And that's something Scott and I are always trying to get across. You gotta try it. Always be willing to experiment. So I probably had 4 or 5 different ways we could go from this first scene to the next scene. And this ended up being our favorite. So we call it a match cut. We have this object in the frame. It's the hat, and it's kind of punches into a closer on the hat. And that's a beautiful way to take us from a city to a cave, which is a very jarring location change. I mean, to go from a city to a cave, to go from real life to the imagination. And this was a really beautiful, elegant way to do that. So I'll play it one more time and then we'll move on to the next transition.
So our kid in the cave has had this sort of, continuous adventure. There's been no ellipses. It's kind of real time. He's being chased by this bad guy who steals the idol from him that he has. And then the guy beats up some other guys and runs out of the cave. And we got a transition from the kid deciding that he's going to chase the guy to actually chasing the guy. And this is interesting because this transition actually was not written. Austen, this is a time when you took artistic liberty with what I covered in my shooting. So I thought that we would push on the kid's face, see his resolve in his face, and then we would smash cut to his feet running in the jungle. And then you'd put two and two together. He decided to chase the guy, and now he's chasing him. But you decided in the cutting that we really needed to see him start to run and then cut to his feet already in the jungle. That just had more momentum. And I agree that it worked far better. So this was sort of an example of where we cut at the very beginning of an action of someone starting to do something, and then we cut to a shot of them, 10 minutes later, completing that action, actually running in the jungle. And that kind of took us across that transition from cave scene to jungle scene.
Then I think one idea that Scott brought to the table, I'm not sure if this was in the script either, but we have this bad guy, the main antagonist of the movie, yelling. He has the idol and he has this maniacal laughter. And one thing I love about this transition is that the laughter takes us into the jungle. And that's really a huge part of this transition. It's not just in the visual cut of the kid running off screen to his feet. It's that we have this maniacal laughter that kind of drops us off into the jungle, which I think was a beautiful touch. So let's look at one more transition. Again, another big location switch, and we'll watch it, and then I'd love for Scott to talk about what we have here.
This one, as I pictured it when we shot it, I always thought the kid's hand would reach for the idol and then we would smash cut on the sound of a car to his eyes bolting open. And so I always thought the music would sort of swell and then we'd just be jarred out of that scene. Smash cut, the music would stop, the honk of the horn would happen and his eyes would bolt open. But Austen, I remember in your first rough cut, you did something different. You did a sound advance edit. You played the horn first, and you kind of took your time to then cut to him waking up, and you didn't have his eyes immediately open. You had his eyes kind of closed and then open. And I remember going, well, gosh, that's not how I saw it. I really wanted it to be this jarring thing. But you created this other thing, which was more like what it felt like to wake up from a dream, where like you hear your alarm clock going on off, but it takes a couple seconds for you to open your eyes and realize the new reality you're in. And I actually liked the psychological implications of what you edited. It felt more like a boy sort of slowly coming out of this reverie. And then the composer, Pat Murray, kind of ran with what you did. And he did not have the music crescendo and then cut off like I originally imagined. He kind of created a smooth transition where I saw a more jarring transition back to the city. And I thought all of those creative choices were really beautiful, but very different from what I originally imagined for this moment.
I think my instinct was I wanted this jarring horn honk to wake him from the dream, and I wanted it to be present in the dream, as if the honk is it's invading this perfect moment. Not only does it invade the space he's in, the jungle scene, but it's invading he's not able to accomplish his mission because he's woken up, or so we think. So I really liked the emotion of that. And then just the fact that also creates this sound advance edit, which is what we would call it, where you hear the sound of the next scene before you see it. And even though it's only a matter of frames, it's definitely a sound advance edit because the honk starts in the jungle. And then we kind of used that motif, Scott, of hearing the city, the honk, in the jungle. Then later in this shot, the ending of the film, we hear the jungle in the city. So we're connecting these two worlds because our protagonist escapes the jungle, he's in the city, but then at the end of the film, spoiler alert, I'll play it real quick. So I think it's important to show the ending because we had the motif of the jungle sounds coming up in the city, but then it also makes it all make sense because now you understand he wasn't robbed of finding the treasure. He had it in the end. And I also wanted to show that because I want to bring up one bonus transition, which is our transition to the end credits, which it's so often overlooked. Scott and I we've made a lot of our own shorts. We've seen a ton of films, and big Hollywood movies pay so much attention to when they cut to the credits, and great TV shows, but a lot of people neglect that. But not Scott Rice. He has an idea of how to cut to the credits, and he has music in mind and exactly how to do it. So I want to have one bonus transition, Scott, where you talk about how you envisioned to cut to these credits and then what we actually ended up doing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, just to riff on what you were saying about how important it is, that moment as we go to the credits, I just feel like, all's well that ends well. So if your film really ends on a high note, particularly a short film, in front of a festival audience, I think that's really valuable, just to feel that sense of enthusiasm, that sense of thrill and delight as you go into the credits right at the end of the moment. Yeah, right at the end of that final moment of the movie has to, I think, have that energy or that final little exclamation point. And so what we did in the case of this film is I knew that we would go to the credits either on a smash cut to the title of the film or on a wipe, okay? So I shot versions without the wipe, I shot versions with the wipe, and Austen, you like the version with the wipe, as did I. And we also wanted to go, well, we had this wipe, so why not, and it's kind of a little Indiana Jones parody, why not have a whip sound? There's something about that wipe and that sound effect of the whip. Just seemed like an obvious choice that was not planned, but we went with that. And, I feel like, Pat Murray, the musician, again, did something unique that I didn't imagine with that transition as well, that made it sing way better than I thought it would. I thought this ending, he kind of did the opposite of what I thought he would do with the transition from the jungle back to the city. I thought that was going to be sort of loud. He made that subtle. And this ending I thought was going to be kind of subtle and quiet. And he decided to crescendo as we see the idol. We reveal the idol in his hands at the end of the film. So it all went very different from what I had in mind in the storyboarding and in the shooting phase. But all those creative decisions came together to make something that worked far better than what I originally imagined.
Thanks, Scott, for going over those transitions. And now you have 4 options for scene transitions that you can take into your own edits today. So if you love content like this, you should definitely check out my free editing guide, which you can download at the link in the description. And if you want to work on real editing projects where I give you personal feedback, I invite you to check out my editing course, which you can find in the description as well. And if you enjoyed this video, you should definitely watch this one next. Happy editing.